Hey everybody, I'm here with
Hello.
a special guest today. Probably might be one of my favorite guests I've ever interviewed.
I would hope so.
This is my husband, Mike.
Hey,
Mike,
everybody. I'm Mike.
and you might be thinking, if it's your husband, you probably are in the same house. Why are you Zooming each other? And really, we just thought this was the best way to do it, where he could show and screen share his computer at times. So that's why we're doing it this way. So,
Yep, I'm downstairs in my little home studio where I do like video editing and color correction stuff, and I also do music making, as you can see from the guitars and stuff I've got hanging on the wall. So yeah, we're in the same house, just on two different computers.
so obviously, I know what you do. I know all about you, probably more than I ever wanted to know, but everyone else doesn't know. So why don't you tell us about what you do? You're a filmmaker. You do music production, editing. You do a little bit of it all. So tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I mean, you pretty much covered it. I started as a professional musician. I went to college for jazz guitar studies at Belmont University, and was super into music production, meaning like making recordings and playing guitar. I toured with a bunch of different bands and stuff right out of college. And then I started working at a church up in Troy, Michigan called Kensington, and I did some tech stuff doing live audio. I then helped them out with being one of the music directors and helping getting the music to work there. And then I ultimately became the creative director, where I was in charge of both the music and the videos that we would make. And since then, I've become a filmmaker as well, which is what I pretty much do for a living now, that and music making.
Awesome. So tell us something that you're working on right now.
Um, right now, I just finished a couple stories for some churches for their Easter services, where we did somebody's like testimony video where they shared their story of what had happened to them, and um, just got done with all of those. Currently, I'm helping with some friends source voiceovers for Amazon Alexa campaign that's going to go all around the world, which is kind of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, we're doing some fun videos about being in quarantine with some friends for fun. Doing one with the family too. Um, and I'm trying to think what else is on the docket. I don't know. I'm available for hire, so feel free to holla at your boy.
Well, it's probably mostly kids watching this, so I don't know if they can, if you're willing to work for, you know, Painted Rocks, but
Yeah, at this point, I'd work for Painted Rocks too.
well, there you go, guys. Get going on your Painted Rocks. So let's take us through a project and start to finish, because I imagine I know a lot because obviously I'm married to you, but I'm always surprised to learn how many parts of a film there are and what it takes to do it. And so I'd love you to maybe take a project and walk us through start to finish, how it works.
Yeah, that's great. So, um, again, I got into this from being a music producer, and the way it started for me was I actually was making music for other people's films. I would, as you've heard, when you go to the movies, there's always a little bit of music happening behind the dialogue and that kind of stuff. And so I started doing that, and figuring out how to make music that would be set to a film was very different than figuring out how to make music that you would make for a song that would go on the radio. And getting into trying to make music for these stories started helping me realize how much I love storytelling, how much I love getting to be a part of helping make a story be something that translates to somebody else. And so it was really music was my entryway into becoming a filmmaker. And so now what I do is when I go in to make a film, I start by trying to hear from the person or the business that I'm serving about what they want to do, what do they want to shoot. And so we do what's called pre-production and creative direction, where we write scripts and we brainstorm and we talk about, oh, it'd be cool if we started with an alarm clock going off and then we saw a shot of a person jumping out of bed and running to the bathroom to get ready for their day, we start having those kind of ideas and we start talking creatively about what we want to see. And then that leads us to an actual script where we come up with a plan on what exactly we will see in the film. That leads us to actually making a bunch of decisions about what all do we need to make this happen? How many cameras do we need? How many people do we need in the crew? And how many people do we need on set? And what kind of locations and wardrobe do we need? That's all called pre-production. So we make a bunch of choices about where we're going to shoot and how many people are going to help us shoot it. Then we actually get to the day where we bring the cameras out, and that's called production. And those days we shoot all of our ideas, we look at our script, we make sure we don't miss anything, we try and get really creative and make sure that things look really good and we get good performances from actors. And then we transition into post-production, which is where we get all of the footage that we shot and we put it in the computer and we start editing it together. We start making our story come to life. And then once we have our edit together and our story makes sense, we then start making music for it. And that's one of my favorite parts because I get to transition from being the editor to the music maker. And so then we start composing and getting our instruments out to try and create some music that helps us tell our story. And then once that's done, we transition into what's called color correction, which many of you guys might not be familiar with, but when ever you see something on TV or a show that you watch or a movie, there's somebody whose whole job it is to decide what colors that film is going to be in. So do we want it more blue and cool, or do we want it more warm and red? There's people making all those kind of choices too, and all this helps us tell more compelling stories. The best stories are when the actors make good choices about performance, where the crew makes great choices about how to capture it, where the editor makes great choices about how to edit it, where the musicians and composers make great choices about how to come along that story and make great sounding music, and when finally the colorist makes great choices about how to give it a mood or a vibe that fits it as well. And when all that happens and we watch it, then we sit back and we say, wow, what an amazing story. So there's a lot of steps to it.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I would imagine, as a kid, I would see movies and I would focus on the actor and think that is the main, most important person to a show. But when I hear you talk and I see all that goes into it, it really is a team of many people and their skills. So you could almost say the lighting, the way that you think about lighting is part of the storytelling.
Absolutely. That's what's so fun about this. It's really cool when you get to build a really big team and work on something together and everybody brings something different to the table. You've got the art department, which is thinking about the world that you're creating. And they're like, how can we make this more, like if you watch some fantasy show on TV and they've created this world that's not like anything you've ever seen before, there's an art director who's making choices about what this world looks like. And he's being really creative
That's
and
great because
thinking about that.
we had a question from one of the kids from Cole. He asked, how do they make it look so real? So what you're saying, there's someone and that's their job, is to make that world look real.
And there's a lot that goes into making it look real. You've got artists that are responsible for thinking about what this world should look like. And then you have, sorry, I'm getting a little flare on my camera here. Here, just a second. I'm going to mask that out really quick.
That's okay. Yeah, every time, he tells me at the end of the day kind of what he was working on, I learned something new about all the people that go in to pulling off these great stories.
Where's that coming from? I can't tell. How funny is this? Coming from up. Oh, I found it.
See, here's a lighting issue in real time. He's thinking, how can I make and improve the lighting in this story right now? And so he's making an adjustment. So tell us what you did to fix your own lighting in the moment we're talking about lighting in the interview.
Yeah, no, that was really fun because it's a case in point. It just goes to show you that there's a lot of times where you never know what you're going to be up against, and you're in the middle of doing your take, or you're in the middle of shooting something and it looks great. All of a sudden the sun moves and now it doesn't look the way that it used to look anymore. And that's where you get all of the professionals and grip and electric to come out and help you mask things off or add a light to help illuminate things the right way, or make it so that it doesn't look like the sun just moved. So that's all part of it too. But what I was saying is that you build this big team, everybody's an expert in a different field. and it's the everybody's talents coming together, kind of like listening to an orchestra play. Like you have a violinist, you have a bassoon player, you have a percussionist, you have the conductor. If everybody does their job well, we get a really amazing uh, piece of music to listen to in the end. And it's really similar when we're building shows, when we're building stories, when we're doing movies. If you watch the credits at the end of the movie, there are sometimes hundreds and hundreds of people involved with making these things, and they're all really talented at what they do. And it's everybody coming and working together that really makes the movie worth watching in the end.
Now, I know you know a little bit about a lot of those different fields because sometimes you have to do more than one role on a film. Do you have anything you could show us an example of so that they could see
Yeah.
what kind of project you're working on, how it looks? How does your day
Yeah.
look
Well,
when you're at home?
yeah, I thought that would be a fun thing to do here. And I'm going to show you guys some stuff that actually I just shot with my family over the past few days. You know, we've been having fun while we've been in quarantine, making our own little stories. And my family really loves Disney World. I'm not going to hold that against
Anyone
them.
who knows us.
Yes, anybody that knows Renee and Lydia and Ellie knows that Disney World is a big deal. So we obviously can't go to Disney World these days because of the quarantine. So we decided to recreate Disney World at our house. And then I got my cameras out and we set up some little looks and scenes and we shot them. And so now I've just gotten to the place we finished shooting yesterday. And now I'm at a place where I'm ready to start editing. So I thought maybe I could show you guys a little bit of what editing looks like, and you can kind of see a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes. So I'm gonna
Awesome.
try and share my screen here. Okay, so this is a piece of software called DaVinci Resolve, and here's something that's really cool. A lot of major films use this software to do their editing and to do their color correction. And guess what? It's free. So you can download it for free off the internet. If you go to Blackmagic Design's website, Blackmagic Design, I don't know if it's .com, but if you Google Blackmagic Design, you'll see a link where you can download a free version of DaVinci Resolve, and you can take your own footage and start editing it in a really similar way to what we're going to be doing.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's super cool. I encourage you guys to check it out. Free is good. So what I've done here, you'll see like I got some purple blobs over here. I got some yellow and some green and pink and kind of beige looking. These are all different places where we shot footage, and they're different setups. So right here you can see Ellie's on this little scooter. We did a version of It's a Small World, and we kind of ran around, and you know the kids acted like they were going through the ride, and you can see there's Moana there in Hawaii, and then you could see that we have other little vignettes that were set up to look like we were actually on the ride, like that. And so that's our very first setup that we did. Here's one from Greece, you know. And so now my job is I've got in this little section right here, let's see, I've got somewhere around um let's see, how long is that? It looks like it's telling me that it's about from 3 minutes to 27 minutes. So that's 24 minutes of footage right there. And our objective is that we have to take all 6 setups that we did and turn it into 1 minute. So we have 27 minutes of footage, or 24 minutes of footage for just one of our setups. So we have way more footage than we actually need.
Some of our kids, the Stoll family and Sophia, were asking how long it takes to make a movie and how much do you have to film to create a story. So what I'm hearing is that you had to film way more than you needed.
Right. Yeah, and we usually do. And there's a couple of different ways to make a movie. One is you spend all of your time in pre-production, coming up with your ideas and choices, and so you only shoot exactly what you need. Even then, you'll still do it multiple times to make sure you get a good take. Or you kind of do, and this is usually what I do, you get a good general sense of what you're doing and then respond creatively at the time when you're shooting. And that's usually more my style of shooting film. So I usually have way more footage than I actually need to make a compelling edit, but this is where editing comes into play, and we start making choices about what stays and goes. So I'll show you our few little setups. We have It's a Small World, where we just kind of rolled through the house and looked at different things. We got mediums, tights, and wides. A medium shot would be something like this, where it's more like kind of a medium distance away. We have wide shots, which is more like this, where we're seeing a lot more of our background from our subject, and then we have tight shots, which is typically more like, let's see if I can find a good tight shot here. Like, you know, one of these opening shots here was a good little tight, like something like this where we're really close to her face and we're just seeing kind of her facial expression. So a good edit is a blend of medium tights and wides. So our first setup is it's a small world. Our second setup, we went outside and we acted like we were at Animal Kingdom, and we drove around in our little Barbie Jeep like we were on a safari, and we saw a bunch of animals placed at different places. So that's our second setup. Um, our third setup, we went, we did like a Toy Story theme where we did almost like arcade game kind of stuff, where we set up games in the house, and the kids went through and tried knocking down the cups and tried, uh, you know, carnival game style doing stuff. So that's another setup. Then we did laser tag where we smoke machined out the living room and we brought a bunch of lights in, and it's
That
like
was
looks like
fun. I
it looks
couldn't
like Buzz.
believe how you were able to create our living room to look like it wasn't part of our house.
Yeah, it's all we use lights and we use smoke, both of which is not usually what we have in our house. Now, not real smoke, it was haze, so it's not, I didn't build a fire in the house or something. It's a machine that's designed to do that safely. But as you can see, it made it look like a totally different environment. And there's some really fun moments here. Even mom got in on it where she was playing laser tag with Lydia. And last night was our last shot where we built a little fake castle and projection mapped onto it, and then we lit off fireworks around it like this, and the kids watched it just like you would at Disney World, where you watch the fireworks at the end of the night. So now our job is we have to like take bits and pieces of each one of those sections and turn it into a minute-long edit. Now, I don't have enough time to do that with you guys on this call, but I thought that we could maybe grab a few shots that we liked and I could show you what it looks like to edit. So I really like this shot that we're already on for one of our final shots, because it's got them in it, silhouetted, it's got the castle in it, and it's got our fireworks in it. So I'm going to take this little clip right here, which denotes that, and I'm going to drag it down into our timeline that we're going to be making our edit from. So that one's cool. And then let's see here. Let me clear our ins and outs so we can see a little better. Let's find maybe one more shot from this setup. There's a good wide right here where all that we're seeing is the house and the castle at the end of the night. So maybe we'll grab a little bit of that, starting in right. Let's see here. All right, so here's what we've got down here. If we look down here now, we have a handful of clips that we've dropped down here, and we have to now make them make sense and work together. And there's no real audio on here because we shot everything slow motion. So we have to figure out how to make this compelling even without much audio. So what I like to do is I like to pick a good piece of music, but let's watch our clip first. So if we start like this, let's watch our video so far with all the clips we picked back to back. Here we go. Cool. Takes a little while to get there. It's a little slow, but we might be able to fix that. And then she starts going. Cool. And now we're at Forky. And now we have the shot of her clapping and loving the game. Then we transition into the cool laser tag games. And then now all of a sudden we're outside and the fireworks are going off. And that's everything that we've got so far. Oh, wait, no, we had one more wide shot, didn't we? Yeah, we had one more little wide shot here. There we go. And that'll be our ending. Cool. So this is far from finished or ready, but it shows you the kind of choices and decisions that we make as editors when we're trying to put clips together. That first clip was way too long. And so one thing I might do is once we get a good shot of that, where we see that she is signing in to play the game and we maybe see her little ears go by, then maybe I'll put a little cut in right here. And then maybe we'll rush through this next little section and we'll do what's called a jump cut, where we jump all the way in time to here. And then we'll do one more, then we'll cut out of it as soon as we start seeing her roll. So now we've collapsed all this down so that it feels like this now. So boom, we see the Mickey Mouse bracelet. Then we see her ears. Then boom, it cuts to that. And then as soon as she starts taking off, we're cutting to our next little vignette. So one thing that all of this is missing is that it's just really disjointed when you can't hear any music on it, right? So let's throw some music on this and see if we can make that feel better. I've got a piece up here that I actually made with some of my friends about Disney World a few
Actually, I
years
have a
ago.
couple questions about music. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
While you're looking at that, I had Caden and some of the Stoll kids, Jack, Evelyn, Vaughn, and Esme, were asking, how does the music fit in a movie? How do you know when to add it and what kind of music to put in?
Yeah, it's a great question. In movies, they do what's called film scores, and film scores are where after the final edit exists. So this phase that we're doing right now, where we're like chopping through all of our footage, we're making choices about what goes in our story. That once we finish doing that and we like the way that our story is working, then all of a sudden we hand it off to a composer who begins to actually create. Sorry, guys. Begins to actually create music specifically to that edit. So a lot of times you'll notice when something really exciting happens on a show that the music starts getting really exciting too. Well, that's because somebody has actually gone and made music to emphasize that excitement. And then when something gets really sad, the music gets kind of sad too. Well, they've made original music and they've made decisions and choices in there to kind of make all of that come to life so that it all fits seamlessly together. So it's usually made after the edit has been made.
Wow.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to do this. I grabbed one more shot because I remembered we had a cool shot where we could see the kids' faces while the fireworks were going off. And I thought that would make a nice little detail to our edit at the end of our video. So I went ahead and dropped that in there too. So let's do this. I've got some music in here, and this is an original song that I wrote and produced with my friend Steve Saputo, Brian Pope, and then our friend Grace Lee, who sang on this in addition to Steve. So I'm gonna throw this on here, and then let's take a look at it and see how it feels. Here we go.
Moments come and moments go. I wish that I could take it slow with you, with you. Clock is ticking, moving fast. I wish that I could make it last with you, with you. Let's go back to where it all began, where we found this is the place where dreams come true, where we found magic. Time stands still when I'm here with you, where we found magic. This is the place where dreams come true, where we found magic. Time stands still when I'm here.
Cool. So you can tell from watching that all of a sudden these things that seemed like random clips started making a lot more it started looking a lot better, and it made a lot more sense once we had music to it. It almost felt more emotional. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but when I watched it, I felt like, wow, this is actually I can sit through this and watch it a lot better with the right music. But what'd you think? Did you think that, babe?
Oh yeah, it totally. Like it's funny. One of the kids asked, let me see which one it was. This Jack, Evelyn, Vaughn, and Esme sent in a bunch of questions, and they were asking, do the actors ever get to watch all the different cuts? And in this case, No, because you filmed all sorts of different takes of it all. And, you know, my girls and I went off to go be busy with our day. But here you are looking through every single one, picking just the specific ones. And this is my first time really getting to see what all you filmed. I had no idea what it was going to look like because I was just not seeing it through the camera lens. So that's
Right.
really cool about it.
And there's still so many more choices and decisions to be made. I have a couple hours of footage here that we're going to make into a 1-minute piece.
Wow.
So I hadn't even looked at everything yet.
That's too. One of the Ross girls asked about that as well. Like, how much film do you need to make a short film? Well, you just said 2 hours for a 1-minute video.
Yeah, and that's not something that is always the case. It just depends on the kind of project you're doing. Something like this where we're just having fun and setting things up and see how it goes. We experiment a lot more, which means we shoot a lot more footage. And it takes a lot longer to edit something where you have more footage. Other things where you're spending a lot of money to build a big set and rent a bunch of cameras and hire a bunch of crew, you don't want to be experimenting on that project. You want to be actually making sure that you've already made all your decisions and you're getting just the shots you need. So it just depends on the kind of project that you're doing. But one thing I thought would be fun is I wanted to illustrate for you guys how big of a difference music can make. So that first, I want to throw another piece of music on this video and watch it and see what you think. The first piece of music that we played was kind of more higher energy and fun. And then this one's a little bit more lower energy, but let's see what this does to the actual film when we watch it with different music behind it. Check this out. I'll go full screen again. Here we go. Wow, that could not have been more different, could it?
Wow. No, much more maybe serious and
Yeah, it almost felt like nostalgic. Like it
yeah,
almost made me more emotional about our
yeah.
time together instead of more like fun and energetic. That is the power of a creative choice or decision. And we have that power with the music that we pick. We have that power with the edit that we make. We have that power with the actor that we cast, the script that we write, the setting that we choose to shoot our story in. All of that, every single one of those choices and decisions make the viewer experience your idea through a different lens, and it's all of it's so important. And that's why it's just so fun, because there's so many variables and you get to pick and choose so many different things. I don't know which one I like more. They're both cool. For a 1-minute piece, I'll probably do the higher energy thing because I want people to track with it the whole time. But if I'm going to do one that's more like a photo album for my family that I want to look back on in 30 years and remember when my kids were this age, maybe I'd pick music that was a little bit more nostalgic and emotional like that, right?
Yeah.
One more quick thing I
So
want to show you guys too, if it's all right, babe, about color, because none of these shots that we've seen so far have any color in them. They're all what we call flat, and a lot of times when we shoot a film, we shoot, our cameras shoot in such a way where we can get the most light out of the image as possible, so that we can make creative choices with it later. And so something like what you're looking at right here, everything looks kind of hazy. The blacks don't look very black. It all looks lifted up. So what we do in color correction is that we get in here and we start to make some creative choices about how we want this image to look. And so one of the things that I would do with something like this is go ahead and darken it up a bit and make it more moody and vibey, as you can see here. And then
wow.
maybe I'd make it so that we don't totally lose her skin tone. And then maybe we'd make some crazy choices. All this stuff is green and blue, but maybe we wanted it to be more like kind of like a deeper like pink and blue, and we can make choices like that. Or we can warm it up and make it more like a green, kind of like the Joker Like, look at that. Look at the difference between
Yeah.
that right there and that right there. Those are two totally different energies for that shot. And we have the ability in color correction to make these kinds of choices. And this is one of my favorite parts. Like, if she's a villain, I'd probably cast her more like this in a green light, because that feels more like something that you would see on like a Batman movie when the Joker would come out, or Hulk or something like that. Something that's more like an angry kind of vibe. If I wanted to cast her more like the hero or heroic, then maybe I'd go to something a little bit more like these kind of like blues or pinks or something like that, where it's more like a it's telling the audience that this is a person who's more gonna save the day for us. So we get to make choices like that as well. And that's like an extreme one, but some of them that are less extreme, like this shot right here, if I wanted to colorize this, I'll show you how much of a difference we can make to this in really quick, just by balancing our image out and making a few choices right off the bat here. Something that looks a little bit more contrasty, a little bit more saturation, get those colors to pop a little bit more. Um, and just a few little moves with my mouse. We started right here, which, like, here I'll show you. This is how the image started, and just by doing a little bit of color correction, we were able to take it all the way up to here.
Yeah. Much
Wow, can you
better.
believe that? From that to that. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? And suppose we wanted these whites, these, like, suppose we said, oh, you know what, this is supposed to be more of like a nighttime chilled out kind of vibe instead of it being so bright and vibrant. We can cool everything off, almost like put it in more of like a blue cast. We can like take the gain way down. We could drop the blacks lower, and then all of a sudden we have a totally different looking type scene. We can even add some cool effects to things too. Like, let's see if we went here and we added this film look. All of a sudden, this is looking quite a bit different. And it's not necessarily that this is the way we want this to look, but it shows us that we have the ability to take a lot of control over the way our image looks, which again is a creative choice that we get to make about what kind of story do we want to tell. Like, how gritty should it look? How vibey should it look? How crunchy should it look? How warm and inviting should it look? We get to make all those different kinds of choices as we sit in the edit suite and make these kind of choices. Look at all this.
I'm
There's so
also
many.
thinking that you must have had an incredible props master on this project, because that Forky and that Mr. Potato Head, those are, wow, you had some incredible
Yeah,
props.
I can't remember who was brought in to do that. Who was it? Do you remember?
I know you must have paid them really well, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, totally. But look at this. This is cool. It almost looks like filmic now. It
Yeah.
almost looks like you'd see on some crunchy old like kind of film, versus how it started, which looked like, here I'll show you. This is how it looks now, and this is how it started looking. Very different from where we took it, right? And
Wow.
that's the power that we have in post production and editing to tell the kind of stories that we want to tell.
So great.
Well, so I'm going to come back to my camera here. Any other questions? I know you had some
Yeah.
students write in questions.
Yeah, there are so many questions. A lot of kids were asking about green screens and special effects, and I thought that's a whole other world that we'll have to save for another day. So don't worry, I'm going to get to those questions eventually. But for today, I thought there's a couple really good ones. One was from Jack, Evelyn, Vaughn, and Esme. They were asking, what kind of camera do you use? Can you show us and tell us quickly what your camera
Yeah. So there's different cameras are tools and lenses are tools, and there's different tools for different jobs. You know, there's times where you need a Phillips head screwdriver and times where you need a flathead screwdriver to fix something. And I like to think of cameras the same way, where, you know, sometimes a GoPro or an iPhone is absolutely the right tool for the job. Other times it's really expensive, big cinema cameras that make cinema movies that are the right things for the job too. The cameras I own a few different kinds, but the one I shoot mainly on, built out, kind of looks like this, which may look kind of big compared to your iPhone, but really it's relatively small for everything that it can do. It's got a wheel here for me to focus it. It's got a lens right here on the front. It's got a monitor so I can kind of see what my image looks like. I've got a handle that I've put on here. It's got a battery on the back that powers everything and some rails. And so most of what I shoot for a living, I shoot on one of these guys, which is a relatively inexpensive cinema camera that shoots in really high quality footage. Everything that we've been looking at so far on my computer, I shot with this camera. But you can shoot a lot of times with, you know, like I said, your iPhone or a GoPro, or I've done projects with a little Sony camera too. Whatever you have, you can tell a story with, and that's one thing I want to encourage everybody to do is take what you've got. Don't think that you need expensive equipment to make compelling content. All you need is a good idea and the time that it takes to invest in that idea, and you'll be surprised at how good it can turn out if you're willing to do that.
Great, great leading question to end with today. Marguerite asked, what makes a good story?
Well, that's great. Obviously, like we've been talking about, it's the assembly of all these different parts. But one thing I want to make sure is communicated to you guys is that everything that maybe you've seen me do so far, I pulled my camera out and you saw me click around in the software and do a bunch of stuff. All of it might look kind of technical and maybe even look like, oh, wow, I don't know how to do that. It looks complicated. The main thing that is the key to telling a great story is actually sitting down and listening to a person who has a story to tell, and honestly, genuinely listening to that person. Great stories can be written in a blog. They can be done as a selfie. They can be done as a major motion picture that somebody spends $100 million to produce. The key to it all is that there's a human being involved that lived through something, that had an experience, that has an idea and wants to share it. And it does not matter where you come from. It does not matter how rich or poor you are. It doesn't matter how talented or not you are. Everybody has a story to share. And so as long as we're authentically sharing that story and we're actually telling the truth, that's what makes great storytelling, is somebody who's willing to tell the truth, even when sometimes the truth might be risky. So again, that's the thing I want to encourage you guys to do the most. Don't get bogged down about cameras and softwares and color correction. That's all stuff that can be learned. Learn how to actually connect to people and authentically and genuinely listen and share what it is they've shared with you. And that's great storytelling.
So great. Thank you. I know that was just the tip of the iceberg in regards to your profession and all that you know and do. But thank you. I think it was so interesting. I hope that all you kids learned from today's workshop, and hopefully we can go dive deeper next time and talk more about green screens and animation.
Yep. There's a quote that I'd love to share. It's from a friend of mine that produced a piece for Wells Fargo, and at the end of it, there's a little quote that a guy says that he's saying, you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great.
Ooh,
and I think that for everybody that's thinking about getting into making music, or thinking about getting into filmmaking, or thinking about telling a story, or photography, or drawing, or architecture, stop comparing yourself to other people. Stop thinking that you don't have what it takes, because you don't have to be great to start. You know, you just have to start in order to end up being great. And I'm a person who did not go to school to learn how to make films. Nobody ever taught me anything. I just watched other people that were doing it. I Googled things on YouTube, and I just got obsessed about telling compelling stories, and I learned something with every project that I do. So just get started.
So great.
That's what I want to say to encourage you guys.
Well, thank you.
Hey, so I hope you enjoyed that workshop and maybe you learned something new. I wanted to mention a couple things. One, I know that the video was kind of jittery, and unfortunately it didn't look like that on our end, but the way that maybe the bandwidth couldn't handle all the information. So just know we're going to release that video at some point, and you'll be able to see it the way it's meant to be seen. So look forward to that. And also tomorrow is going to be Tuesday's workshop, and we'll be interviewing Daniel Zott. So if you know Miss Nancy, it's her husband. He is a member of the duo Junior, which is a Detroit-based pop band. and they're just incredible. If you haven't heard their music yet, it's, you probably heard it on the radio and in movies, and so we're going to talk to him about what it is like to be an artist and a touring artist. So if you have any questions, please send them to us. You can email us. It'll be in the description below, but we'd love to hear from you. All right, see you then. Bye.